Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli, and as a parent, I think it's safe to say we all want what's best for our child, right? And we think we are our child's best advocate. But little do we know a lot about education law and what it takes to write these 504s and IEPs. And oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. You sometimes have to call in the big guns. And that's who we're calling in today. Miss Allison Vrolijk, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
She is a lawyer in special education. And before we get really into the meat and bones of what you do, give me a little backstory, Allison, on how you got into special education law to begin with.
Sure. So, in my former life before children, I was primarily a criminal appellate prosecutor. So I worked for the state doing criminal appeals. And then I had my first child, in 2002. So he's now 20. And I stopped working at that time. And 2 years later, I had twins. And one of those twins at right around 12 or 14 months old, we started noticing some developmental delays. So I took him all over the place to try to figure out exactly what was going on with him. Eventually, we got initial diagnoses of apraxia and dyspraxia and sensory integration dysfunction. And I started going online and talking with other parents and trying to get information and advice. And when I type, I have a really, really hard time turning off the lawyer. So people started asking me, hey, are you an attorney? We really could use more attorneys in this area in Georgia. And so that, coupled with the fact that my mother was a special education attorney, my sister is a school psychologist up in Maryland, and so it's sort of in the blood. When I was ready to start working again, I decided to try my hand at special education law and share what I've learned and what I was learning along the way with my own son, because he started off at Babies Can't Wait and then transferred to an IEP. When he was 3, and then I moved him from an IEP to a 504 when he was in 6th grade. So I've sort of experienced the whole range with him. And I thought that I would share that experience with parents.
What a big difference going from criminal prosecution to special education. Did you have to go back to school for that, Allison, or did they have classes that you could like add to your law degree with that?
Yeah, so I didn't actually have to go back to school, but there, the Georgia Advocacy Office here in town was doing, I guess about once a year, they were doing advocacy classes for parents. And anytime that an attorney was interested in taking classes, they always admitted them to their program. And so I did that. I also joined a national organization called COPA, which is a fantastic organization. It's for parents and attorneys and advocates to join. It's a national special education advocacy group. And I went to some of their conferences, so I've learned a lot through that as well. But no additional schooling, thankfully.
Thankfully. When we get back with Allison Vrolijk, we'll find out exactly what special education law entails. Stay close. Thanks for coming back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm here with special education attorney Allison Vrolijk. Allison, thanks again for being on the show. Tell me a little bit about what it is you do. Do you do the 504s, the IEPs, the financials? What exactly is special education law?
Okay, so I could say really quickly right off the bat, I do not touch financials with a 10-foot pole. That is not how my brain works.
Cross it off the list.
Cross it off. I don't do special needs trusts and wills. I refer all that stuff out. I solely do special education. I help parents with 504 plans and IEPs. So I help them with initial eligibility. I help them, I attend the meetings to help write up the 504 plans or the IEPs and the goals and objectives. I help parents with monitoring whether their children are actually making progress in the public schools. And I help parents with manifestation determination hearings when their child gets into disciplinary trouble.
Okay, I have never in my life heard of a manifestation hearing, and I'm sure there are other parents watching right now that have never heard of this word. What is a manifestation hearing?
Yeah, so a lot of parents are surprised when they hear that their child can still be disciplined, so receive in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension for behaviors that are manifestations of their disability. So they can receive the out of school suspension for up to 10 days. Once they hit that 10 days, then
I'm sorry. Can you give me an example of that?
so, I mean, let's use a student with autism. So, students with autism have interfering behaviors. A lot of them have behavior intervention plans. And actually, any behaviors that are included in the behavior intervention plan, they still could be disciplined for up to 10 days. So, scripting, so aggressive behaviors, so disruptive behaviors in a classroom. You know, if a child posts something on social media that ends up being disrupting the school environment, all of those are things that a school potentially could discipline the child for, regardless of whether there's information in the IEP or behavior intervention plan.
Do you find yourself having to go to a lot of these manifestation hearings?
I go to a fair number, unfortunately.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm actually preparing for one right now that's going to be at some point this week. So yeah, it's unfortunate when the behavior is clearly a manifestation. It's a waste of everyone's time, really, is what it is, when a child's behavior is a manifestation of their disability. But yeah,
Do you
I mean,
find that? No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's and for any parents who are facing a tribunal or disciplinary hearing, that means that the school is actually looking to potentially expel the student, probably, or give them a longer term suspension. It's really important for a parent to put a lot of time, energy, and effort into preparing for the manifestation determination hearing first. Because if they're successful there, then the tribunal never happens. And a lot of the times, that's where their case is going to be kicked out, because the behaviors are manifesting behaviors, especially if it's mentioned in the IEP.
Allison Vrolijk, special education attorney, right here with me today. Allison, stick around. I have some questions for you coming up here in just a minute, okay? Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm here with special education attorney Allison Vrolijk. Allison, can you explain, because here's my story. When we first moved to Cobb County, Lyric's IEP rolled over from Colorado, right? And so I went to these IEP meetings kind of blind because they were run just a little bit differently than they are in Colorado. And I thought I was making really good choices and helping to be part of the team. And then I was seeing that he wasn't really going anywhere or making any improvements. So word of mouth, I got in touch with my advocate, Marcia Lindener, and she came with me. And boy, did that change. Like everything IEP changed. She was business and money, and they were business and money back with her and then with my child. Is there a difference between being an advocate and a special education attorney? I mean, I know the degree is different, right? But like, it kind of sounds like both are working for the same good, right?
We definitely are working for the same good. I mean, the difference that you get when you bring an attorney versus an advocate typically is the people in the room. So I don't know if districts always send county level personnel in to an IEP meeting when an advocate is there. When an attorney is there, you always have county level personnel in the IEP meeting, which really, really changes the dynamic in the meeting, because you have people who are arguably more educated and more experienced in special education law, and the ones who are even more accountable in the room. So you know that the law is going to be followed, and you know that the child is going to get what they need, more so than if it's just the local school personnel in the room.
We were talking to advocates on the show in prior episodes, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask the same question that I asked them, and that is about how much do you charge? Because, well, financially, parents struggle when they have special education kiddos because they have to take on the medical and the therapies and the this and the out-of-pocket expenses. And, you know, as a mom, it just gets out of control, right? I mean, you've taken your kid everywhere to get that one diagnosis that not everybody could give him before. So about how much are people looking at when they look to get a special education attorney? A ballpark.
Yeah, so I haven't surveyed other attorneys to find out what they're charging. My understanding is that for my own personal reasons, I keep my rate under the market rate and under what I could be charging. Again, for the reasons that you just express because I know the time and money that it takes to raise a child that has special needs. So, so attorneys charge by the hour typically. So I would say hourly rate, probably anywhere from 300 to 500, I would think, in Georgia for a special education attorney. And now meetings can run anywhere from an hour, like a 504 meeting typically takes about an hour, to IEP meetings. I've had IEP meetings that have spanned over 8 hours in 3 days. So it
Whoa.
all depends on what the issues are, and what needs to be taken care of.
And then one of those manifestation hearings.
The manifestation hearings are typically under 2 hours.
Okay, so we're still looking in a ballpark.
Typically, they're under 2.
Of anywhere between $300 to $500 an hour.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to start saving our pennies, parents. if we need her, she's there for us, and that's Allison Vrolijk. Allison, stick around. I've got more questions for you, okay?
Sounds good.
Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm here with special education attorney Allison Vrolijk. Allison, what would be some best free advice that you could give to parents who are, just starting their journey or kids are just starting to go into school?
I think there's 2 pieces of advice that I would give to parents. Number 1 is really, really know your child, understand their disability, understand the impact of their disability on their education. That's number 1. Number 2 is educate yourself on special education law and rules. And if you have the knowledge base in those 2 areas, then you could really be the most effective advocate for your child possible. Without that, a lot of times schools will say, this is what we can do, or this is what we are doing. And unfortunately, as a parent, if you don't know otherwise, you'll just say, okay.
Yes.
And then what I hear 2-3 years down the road from parents, they say, I wish I knew this 3 years ago.
Speaking of which, 2-3 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, have you ever had a parent come back and share because of your services and you stepping in on their behalf? Have you ever heard any success stories of a child later down, like fast forward to today?
Yeah, so it's not often, but it really the success stories down the line really, really make my day and make all this worth it. Like recently, I heard from a parent who I represented them and helped their child probably 7 or 8 years ago. It might have even been a little longer ago than that. And we never, really, at the time, it didn't seem like he was going to be able to go on to college and live independently. And he's doing both of those things right now in another state that's really far away. So it just really warmed my heart. And the mom said, Allison, it's because of you, that we got him on the right path and he's now living his dream. So that's what does it for me. That's what really does it for me.
Allison, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, great. So I have a website. It's vroliklaw.com, which you probably want me to spell. VROLIJKLAW.com is my website. I also have a Facebook page. So if you search in the Facebook search box for my name, Allison Vrolijk, I promise you I'm the only one that comes up. So follow that Facebook page, and I try to do quizzes and questions and discussion points and thoughts of the day and advice, every once in a while, and really try to get a discussion going. That the page is wonderful. It's got parents and advocates and teachers on it all alike, so we get to hear different perspectives. Or they could just call me. Just give me a call at 470-550-7268.
I love this. Allison Vrolijk, special education attorney. Allison, what's been the hardest case for you to have to go through? Like, what's a case that it just tore at your heartstrings too?
So I had a similar...
I know you can't mention names.
Yeah, no, I won't mention names, but actually I had this similar situation happen to 2 different clients in the past year. And they were both students on the autism spectrum who would be considered Asperger's, if we still had that term, if we still use that term. And the schools just sort of didn't want to have to deal with their behavior. So they suspended them and kept suspending them and kept suspending them. And then we finally got to that manifestation determination review, and their behavior, both of them, clearly manifestations of their disability. Like there was no question. And unfortunately, both of the schools said that they weren't manifestations. And so they went ahead and suspended the kids anyway.
Ugh.
Parents at that point have to decide whether to appeal and what they want to do. Now their child is at a public school or assigned to a public school that doesn't want them there and doesn't want to have to address what their needs are.
I was just going to say, how do you ever send your kid back to that school? You can't.
One of them, and you can't, but one of them didn't really, neither of them actually have any other really good options. So, homeschooling kind of thing. It's just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. So, if you fight an MDR, what do? You get to go back to that school that didn't want you there. It's not a great situation. It breaks my heart.
It would break my heart too. And there are other alternative options out there, like you said, homeschool. There's private schools. There north, south, east, and west of the city, and in the heart of the city that parents just need to go. And I know that it again comes down to financials. Can you afford to send your kid to a private school?
Right.
But come hook or crook, there's a will, there's a way. You're going to make it happen for the sake of your child, because no kid should go back to a school who clearly doesn't want them there. And no matter how hard you fight, sometimes it's a losing battle, right, Allison?
That's true. That's true.
Allison Vrolijk, special education attorney, right here with me on Life with the Spectrum. When we get back, we'll find out some other little tidbits of information here coming up next. Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. Wrapping things up with Allison Vrolijk, who's a special education attorney. Allison, I know that you were talking a little bit at the beginning of the show about your own son, and you had mentioned something called prompt. And I really thought that was pretty interesting, and I thought other parents might find it interesting as well. Mind sharing?
Sure. So his first deficit that popped up when he was 14 months old is he wasn't talking. So I brought him to several people here in Atlanta. He was diagnosed with a severe communication disorder. Babies Can't Wait sent a very generic green speech language pathologist who worked for 4 months to try to get him to say the word up. And he would just say, He would keep saying, and she made no progress with him. And the various evaluations I had done here in Atlanta, I just never felt like, I call it mommy gut. I never felt like anyone really nailed what was going on with him, like didn't really figure it out. So I had a connection at Georgetown University. I brought him up there for a series of evaluations. One of the things that they ended up diagnosing him with was apraxia of speech. So it's a motor planning disorder where he can't figure out how to sequence his muscles in his mouth and his lips and his tongue in order to make the sounds, produce the sounds he needed for speech. So they recommended I find a prompt trained speech therapist, which I did. And prompt uses external manipulation and cues in order to teach the child what their muscles need to do in order to produce a sound. So for example, this speech therapist, to get him to say the word up, when he would say she would go she would literally push his bottom lip up to his top lip. And whereas the other speech language pathologist for 4 months couldn't get him to say the word up, this prompt trained therapist had him saying up in 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
So, that was really the perfect therapy for him. He literally learned how to make all of his consonant sounds with prompt. I just encourage parents, especially moms, that mommy gut. If you think that something's not working or something's not right or someone hasn't figured, just keep pushing, keep looking for the right answers.
And that's what I think it kind of goes hand in hand, this prompt therapy. And, like you said, you took your son to half a dozen places or more, and you finally found the right place that gave him the right diagnosis at the right time, and then you were able to get the right therapy for it. It's kind of like special education law for families who continue to go to these IEP meetings or 504 meetings, or they keep running up against the same brick wall. It's time to hire someone that will help you get everything that your child deserves, because your child deserves everything a neurotypical child deserves, and that and maybe that is calling Allison Vrolijk. Allison, how can people once again get in touch with you?
So yeah, they could give me a call, 470-550-7268, or they can find me on my website. They can send a message through my website. That's vroliklaw.com, VROLIJKLAW.com, or find me on Facebook. Just search for my name and you'll see the law office page.
Thank you so much again for being here, Allison. What you're doing is amazing, and I hope people get in touch with you if they need you.
Thanks a lot. It's been my pleasure being here.
I think it's safe to say that we are all of our child's biggest advocates, right? But sometimes we don't know all the ins and outs of the law. And that's when bringing in an attorney like special education attorney Allison Vrolijk may come in handy to your child's next IEP or your 504 meeting, all right? That's something good to know. And she's right here in our backyard, so look her up for sure. Yeah, as we continue to do these shows, remember, if there's somebody that I need to be speaking to that you think is making a difference and being a force for good, an organization, a business, a therapy, just a person in general, make sure you comment below or send me an email, Gina@gcast.com. It's GKASTS.com, and we'll see if we can't get them on a future episode of Life with the Spectrum. See ya.